You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts Jon Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
I love it when technology is working. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. I guess good morning. It's 11. But good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And welcome, Wendy Lee. It's awesome to see you once again for another episode of Prosper in the Kingdom. How are you doing?
Doing well. Happy to be here. Warmer weather
Nice.
days.
I know, right? It's
all
supposed to
good.
be 80 something today. I'm loving it. Yeah, we got graduations, baseball's in full swing. So I've got a house load of people coming here in a couple of days. I'm trying to get everything done right before, that last minute cleaning and dotting the I's, crossing the T's and stuff. So I'll be glad when June 1 gets here and everything kind of starts settling down for the summer. So good
That's
stuff.
what you
Good
say. It'll settle down, but
I know. I think I'm kind of lying to myself to give a light at the end of the tunnel, but that's not why we're here today. We're actually talking about something that's fairly exciting. We're talking about winning with money and health in marriage. So those are the two biggest stressors on healthy marriages. And, so we're going to be talking about that today and giving our perspectives on that. So, let's kind of jump into that, Wendy, and why don't you kick us off and let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we can help couples win.
all right. Well, when you're in a partnership like that, it's important to be partners, right? So we have a scripture we pulled up, Ecclesiastes 4:9. It says, two are better than one. They have a good return for their labor. So we're going to talk about a couple of ways to get on the same page and move forward in health and wealth as a couple. So,
well, it's really critical for a couple of different reasons. One, on the financial planning side of what we do, I see a lot of people that they aren't in sync with what their, number one, what their financial goals are, right? And number two, who's actually managing it. Typically, you got somebody that's a spender and somebody that's a saver. You've got somebody who handles the bills, if you will, and if you're using a budget software, spending plan software, and then you've got somebody else who they don't really know what's going on or things like that, and that's where it gets scary, especially if you later in life when you have the death of a spouse, the other person may not even have a clue of how to manage things and things like that. So you can set yourself up for some failures, but even along the way, and that's really what we're talking about today, is being in alignment on what your financial goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and are you on the same page with what you want to do later in life? So that's kind of the key. So, I think the first one is sharing that financial vision, right? Is it a common vision? Have you talked about it? And hopefully, you go through some kind of premarital counseling or things like that. And if you haven't, that's not a big deal. Make a point to go to some kind of, a class or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of them out there. As a matter of fact, I just taught one at my church this last weekend. But really to get an alignment on walking together. And the Bible talks about that in Amos 3:3. I haven't really read the book of Amos. I pulled that one out for this episode today, but it says, do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so. And it sounds simple, but do they agree to walk together? Yeah, well, we're getting married, so yeah, we're agreeing to walk together. But have you talked about one of the most important things? Have you talked about your finances? Have you talked about, do you want to stay healthy? You may have one person who's, wants to stay in shape, and the other person's a couch potato. So that can create a lot of resentment. That can create a lot of tension. And, at first it may not be that big of a deal, but as time goes on, that
right.
That pebble in your shoe, so to speak, is going to start wearing on it. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's really about communication, right? And working together. I never thought about this until way later in life, but somebody brought up to me once, marriage is a business partnership. Like it's
taking the emotions out of it.
literally,
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. There's the spiritual side and all that. But as far as like the way you function it's two whole people coming together, not two half people, two whole people coming together with their own thoughts, their own vision, their own, all these things that you have to come to that shared vision together. You've got to say, okay, almost like in a business that you say, what are our goals? What do we want to achieve? You've got to do that in your marriage too. And I think so many times we're not prepared for that. And we just go into marriage like, we're in love, it'll all work out.
I know. I saw this fairy tale on Disney World or Disney, channel, and it's
Movies,
like, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of emotion, obviously tied to, dating and getting married and things like that, or becoming, life partners if you're not going, down the marriage aisle. But it's one of those things that you look at what happens, and a lot of times, well, maybe it's just me, I don't want to say anything, so you don't say anything, and then it starts to build up, right? And a lot of disagreements come from unspoken expectations, right? It's like, I just assume that they would save like I do. I just assume that they would want to, and you may have one spouse that's like, no, YOLO, I don't want to, paying for kids' college, right? That was a discussion I had with my previous spouse. The expectation, we weren't in alignment on what was going to happen, so we compromised and worked through that piece. But it was something that I hadn't really thought of it. When you're young and no kids or whatever, it's one of those things that it's important to talk about, let's put it that way, and have that communication line. So I would stress having once a year, every January, doing your financial goals for the year. Do it together, right? So that way you're kind of on the same page and you're not just letting things fester. But that's a great time as you kind of start the new year, setting your goals, health goals, financial goals, things like that. But do it as a family, do it together, even do it with your kids. And that way they get in the mindset of setting goals. It's important. It's important. So number one, commit to sharing that financial vision together, right? Number two, and this goes back to, I guess the communication piece, we'll just say that, but transparency and teamwork, right? Genesis 2:24, they shall become one flesh. When you're married, and committed to one another, everything comes together. And people try to solve for that. Well, we keep our finances separate or whatever. And whatever you do for you, that's your call, that's your choice. But you've got to still figure out how to work together. Because even if you do have separate finances, for example, and this is one I kind of scratch my head at, you go through a marriage, you go through life with everything separate. And I've seen this with clients as well. One's a saver, planning and things like that, and one's not. Well, when you go into retirement, what are you going to do? Are you going to not let your spouse retire and go on all those trips by yourself? I mean, so it all ties together, but there is no your money, my money. It becomes resources, even though, team resources, even though you may keep it in separate accounts. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone has their, I'm sure, very strong opinions on whether you put it together or keep it separate.
Yeah.
And I know people have their reasons for whichever way. But like you said, regardless of what account it's in, I'm by myself and I have like 12 accounts, right? Regardless of what account it is, there's got to be that honest, open. I mean, we talk to couples all the time. And a lot of times on my end, I have a lot of connections that are women that are making their own money. And I'm blown away at how many women are like, my husband has no idea this or that, right? Like, or he does his thing, I do my thing. And to your point, like about the retirement thing, I mean, we have couples that one's set for retirement and then the other one not anywhere close. And it's like, okay, but you're not doing it together. To your point, it's like, so one's doing all the hard work and then the other one's like, oh, I'm just going to take control.
Well, and in reality too, you never really know what's around the corner. I mean, everybody goes into it, planning success, right? Nobody plans for failure, especially when it comes to a marriage and finances and things like that. But, you've been divorced, I'm divorced, right?
Mhm.
So it's one of those situations where if you're not in sync, there's an opportunity, and even in marriage, of not being completely transparent, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, we've got my money, his money, and then our money, or whatever the case may be. Or yeah, I've got this account, they don't know about it or whatever. I'm a
Mhm.
spender, and that's really where it becomes, that's planting the seeds for, number one, it's not being transparent, it's not being
Right.
honest in the relationship, and that's where problems happen,
Right.
right? Whether it's income, expenses, credit cards that the other person doesn't know about, things like that, spending habits. If you violate that, you start to violate the trust in the relationship, right?
Right. Right.
And a simple solve for that is, number one, just be transparent, working together. But as you develop your spending plan and your budgeting and things like that, um, have some money set aside that, okay, this is going to go to you every month. This is going to go to me. We have the same amount, whether it's $100, $1,000, whatever. That's your number, right? As the listener, the viewer, but that's your money. You do whatever you want with it,
Mhm.
and realize that I've seen somewhere, okay, well, if we spend money on something, we have to ask permission from the other person. I think, me personally, that's a little overkill, but having a limit set up, like, you're not going to
Mhm.
go out and buy a new car and say, hey, look what I
Right.
bought today, right? I mean, because that impacts, and so it's again goes back to that transparency
Mhm.
and communication. And if there is some resentment on the other side, you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to go out and spend this money. Well, why? That's not fair. Okay, well, let's talk about that, because
Yeah.
clearly there's some kind of an issue there. And hindsight, I think people should look at that up close early, as
Mhm.
opposed to just kind of hiding it or ignoring it
Yeah.
and letting it go on, because it's going to fester, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just be straight up. I was very guilty of not having a very good money mindset in my marriage. I was, I made a lot of bad choices, and I wasn't upfront, and I didn't like to talk about it. And I wanted to control it all. Like, I really had issues, and there's reasons I had those issues, but it wasn't
Mhm.
about the relationship, but we never dug deeper to find out what it was. And so
Mhm.
it's important, like, if you're feeling those feelings of resentment, anger, frustration, whatever it is, like, it's important, like you said, to talk about that, because I think there's something underlying, right? It's
Mhm.
not the money is not really probably the issue. It's something deeper than that needs to be
No, and
worked out.
you're exactly right. But if you don't talk about it, something's gonna happen down the
Right.
road, and it's gonna, like I said, cause resentment, in a lot of cases, divorce.
Mhm.
But again, this is again going back to why the spending plan is so important. When I coach
Mhm.
clients on the financial side, and looking at developing your budget, spending plan is what I call it, right? You're going to get together twice a month and have a little meeting. Just when we pay the bills on the first, let's look at where we're at. When we pay the bills on the 15th, let's look at where we're at. So that way, everybody's up to speed. Everybody's
Mhm.
transparent. Everybody knows what's going on. You're working together to get your financial goals, and it becomes really easy once you get up and running. I mean, at first, it's a little awkward, maybe, for some people, but again, have that money day to review your finances together. And
Mhm.
twice a month over a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning before you get your day going is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So, number two, practice transparency and teamwork. Number three, and I love this, is start building healthy habits as a team. And it's not too late. So if you've been married for double digit years, and you're frustrated with one another about the money stuff, or if that's a sensitive subject, we don't talk about money because it causes issues. That's it. You probably need to face head on, and do it without emotion as much as possible, but be honest, and be also willing to communicate and compromise. But it's, you discipline your finances, you also want to discipline your body and keep it under control, right? Be the master of your own domain, right?
Yeah, I mean, physical goals, I think it's important. It's funny because you do see, like, uh most often in my circle, I notice that when one is really fit, typically the other one is too. And I think
Mhm.
that's because if you're with someone and you intend to have healthy habits and, work out and all of those things, and then you're with someone who doesn't do that,
Mhm.
eventually they're pulling you down versus you lifting them up a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You're holding back, and that,
yeah.
again, causes issues, causes resentment and things like that. And, if you're young and get married and start out early in life, it may be a situation where as things go on, as life settles in, you get that desk job, you get out of shape, but one person is staying in shape and the other's not, then all of a sudden they're, you know,
Mhm.
hey, what's gonna happen when later in life you wanna start doing things as an older person, and you can't because the other person can't go, or maybe they're have some health
Mhm.
issues and they just
Yeah.
can't keep up, or whatever the case may be, and then it's again starting that little bit of resentment. We're not talking about going on, let's go hike Kilimanjaro, right? Just being able to go out and take a walk, right, and exercise and things like that together. The more you do together, the more you treat it like a team, you become that
Mhm.
dream team, whether it's in your finances, in your health, in
Yeah.
life in general. You've got each other's back, and go into it with that mindset. It's going to just create a healthier,
Mhm.
more sustainable, and bulletproof, if you will, relationship.
And I think too, like health includes so much more, especially in today's day and age. It includes so
Mhm.
much more than a conversation around exercise,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I
What are you
mean,
putting in your body, right? Yeah.
the when you're in I mean, I know, like for me, like if junk's in the house, I eat the junk. Like I can't have it in my house. But then
Yep.
even as far as like healthcare and things like that, like
Yeah.
what I mean, I'm not going to say the V word, but the jabs, right? Like
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
that needs to be had because these are things that I mean, my kids, because of me, feel very strongly in one direction about that stuff. And it's like, this is
Mhm.
a conversation you've got to have before you even settle down and marry someone. Because if you both have polarizing views on that and then you bring kids into the mix, I mean, that's a really difficult thing that I think a lot of people have experienced in the last few
Yeah,
years.
I was married during that period, and it was a very challenging conversation. Not to go into details, but I felt one way, and my former spouse felt the other, and it was a decision for her. But when the kids came involved, and we started having a conversation about, they need to go get the jab, I'm like,
Hmm.
absolutely not. And it created some stress and things like that. It all worked out in the end.
Hmm.
But again, it's just like health, and even taking, what are you putting in your body, as far as, are
Hmm.
you taking a multivitamin, are you doing supplements and things like that, and how are you treating your body? And again, once you the more you can align,
Hmm.
the better the relationship's going to be, because you feel like you're both on the same page, and you feel like not only you're not going through life on your own, but you're not dragging somebody or forcing somebody to go in a direction that you want to go in, and it's like a constant struggle,
Hmm.
right? And I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of it boils down to just communication, and and communication early rather than later.
Right.
So that's just, again, choosing those small healthy habits, choosing those small financial moves out of the gate, and being transparent and honest with one another. I think that's the key right there. That's the key. So if there is a conflict, though, again, and they're going to be, I mean, nobody's perfect, right? It's one of those things that when conflicts do arise, again, reminding yourself that you're on the same team, and handling the conflict with grace and prayer,
Mhm.
right? Realizing, hey, not only am I married to this person, or we're in a committed relationship, or whatever the case may be, but that's also my brother or sister in Christ, right? And you put that perspective on it, all of a sudden it's like,
Mhm.
okay, it just adds a whole other level to it, another depth to it. Um, Colossians 3:13-14, forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, right? Not that you're
Mhm.
going to forget, but again, looking at these financial disagreements, these health disagreements, they're going to happen,
Mhm.
and hopefully you can work through them. But again, that's why it's so critical to have those conversations up front and make sure you're working together. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I think the grace thing is, I mean, Y'all, I'm just going to be like, it takes a long time to figure this stuff out.
It
It
does.
really does.
It's a constant journey. It's a
I
constant
mean,
journey.
I now am such a different person, even than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, same.
And and now, like, I'm like, oh wow, I was a jerk sometimes. Like I was a really selfish person. Like, and it's hard. And I will say
It's
that
humbling. It's
it
humbling
is.
too.
And I will say this as a divorced, going through divorce. I did lots of things wrong. It takes two. There's two people that do a lot of things wrong, but getting around, if to really make it, I feel like you need to get around couples that are doing it right, that have had a long relationship or have had the wrong. I mean, I feel like I'm way more wise about relationships now than I was when I was married. But
well, it comes with experience. It comes with maturity, right? Yeah.
And it's just so many times I would just say this. My biggest piece of advice I can give people is to truly pause and put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, like, if you love them, can you see where they're coming from? And I was not good at that. That's something I've really just learned. I was that defensive person that always thought everything was an attack, and you're coming at me, and like, but I didn't know that. Right. So, but being around other couples that are doing it right, that will teach you that and communicate that with you, and having that mediator, having somebody, I mean, y'all, if you're
being
watching
open
this,
to receiving that feedback too.
the feedback. And so, and just figure out each other's how you handle things. Like, some people need to walk away and cool off. Some people want to press in now. And it's like coming to the agreement on, okay, I understand that my partner, even though I want to press in, my partner needs to have a chill moment.
And just digest it. That's how I am. It's like, I need to digest it and process it and remove the emotion, because you get caught up in the moment, right? And there's a lot of emotional play. And that's where it's like people try to win the argument, right? Whether it's in finances, whether it's in health or whatever, they try to win the argument. And really the focus should be around winning in the relationship, right? And not necessarily, I won that one. Well, yeah, you may have won, but it's like there's an old story I heard a long time ago about, as a wedding gift, this couple got this beautiful piece of oak wood that they were going to build a house and have it as their mantle place. It was from their family farm and things like that. And the father had, crafted it and made it nice. And then as he gave it to them, before he gave it to them, they were admiring the beauty of it. He took two nails and hammered into the top of it. And they looked at it like, why did you just do that to this nail? And he took the nails out. He's like, well, I'll remove them. And, he's like, well, yeah, but Dad, the nail holes are still in the wood. He's like, remember that. He goes, you've got a beautiful marriage you're about to walk into. And he goes, things are going to happen, but be cautious of your words. Be cautious of how you react, because even though you can remove that nail, the mark is still left behind. And so it was like, that was powerful. And I just always remembered that. So it's one of those things that, you try to control your emotions and really look at it, like you said, from the other person's perspective, but handle that conflict with grace and prayer, and try to focus on winning in the relationship, not necessarily winning the argument. And then lastly, focus on legacy, not just lifestyle. A few years ago, YOLO was big, right? And everybody was, and I talked about this in the class I just taught at my church on the financial side of, looking at not only for today, but tomorrow. Proverbs 13:2, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, not just your kids, but your children's children. And that doesn't mean hand them a check for $500,000 or $100,000 or whatever, but having a true legacy, an example that you're setting for your children, teaching them about finances, teaching them about eating healthy, teaching them how to not just spend time, just because you're running on your, PlayStation 5 game does not mean you're in good shape, right? And so really getting them out. Yeah, when you're playing games, and stuff like that. My kids, when they were younger, and happy birthday to my youngest Ben. He's actually 20 today, so shout out to him.
Happy birthday.
At University of Kentucky. Yeah. But he used to play Minecraft and stuff like that. Now he would always go out because we limited their time and stuff like that. But, you know, what you do, your kids watch you, right?
Mhm.
Just like you said, get around other people that are winning. Your kids are watching you, and they're going to do what you do, not what you say all the time.
Yep.
And that is so key to help your future generations in your family, not only from a financial perspective, but a health perspective, is really taking that role seriously and leading from the front, right?
Mhm.
Leading as an example, and being there for, and help them through their challenges, not just letting them figure it out on their own, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, it's so important what the way we raise our kids, the way we
Yeah.
pour into them. And I was trying to think of the example, like you said. Oh, it was that I shared a reel the other day of
Yeah.
I was doing handstands. I know you saw it, but I was doing handstands, and every time I was like, crap, crap, because it was back when I first
Yep.
started, and
Yep.
I couldn't
Yep.
do them right. And I kept falling down, crap, crap. And then Sloan does hers, and she's like, gosh darn it, or something. And I was like, hey, positive words. And she's like,
I know.
you just said crap, crap, crap.
I love that you left that in the video too, because that's, I mean, that's a perfect example right there. They're gonna, and it's your friends and everything else, people you go to church with, people you work with, things like that. They're watching you,
Yeah,
and so just again, and this is a little off topic, but making sure your words
yeah,
align with your actions, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
talking about actions, and that's kind of a wrap on the things today. Talking about actions. Number one, show us some love, help us out with our YouTube channel and our podcast. Give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, and we'd love to hear your comments. So I'm going to ask everybody who's listening, take a quick second. What's one area where you and your spouse can better align? Is it money or is it health? And just drop it in the comments. And if you're getting some value out of this, show some love on that too. But definitely let us know if you've got a topic you'd like to hear about. Next week, we're still on this series. This is I think week 9, right? So we're closing up the 12 weeks, but we're diving into what the Bible says about retirement and longevity. So that's going to be our topic next week. So looking at it, the number one fear of retirees is not death, it's outlasting their money. So we're going to make sure that we talk about that. So don't miss it. Make sure you're clicking the like and subscribe buttons and you're getting alerts on this stuff. But again, another great episode. Hopefully you got some value out of it. And we will see you next week, Wendy, on another Prosper in the Kingdom.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.